The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode 161.
Oi! Don't be scared. All of this is new to you, and new can be scary. When people need help, I never refuse. There's this moment when you're sure you're about to die, and then you're born. I know exactly who I am. I'm the Doctor. Ta-da! Ooh. Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who, and today we're discussing the latest episode from the, was it 12th series? No, I can never keep track. 12th series, 13th
Yes.
Doctor. It's called Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror. Joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going?
Very well. Folks, if you're not subscribed to the show, you should be. And if you should, go to subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, your favorite podcast app. You can go to the SQPN YouTube channel, subscribe there. You can even listen on your Amazon Echo device and just say Echo and whatever the wake word is, because I don't want to wake mine up. Echo, play Secrets of Doctor Who podcast, and it will play it. So wherever podcasts are found, you'll find us. All right, so we're talking about this new episode, the Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, and the Doctor and companions, the fam, they are in around 1900, after 1902, for reasons that we'll get into, and they are encounter the famous inventor Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison, and some aliens, and hilarity ensues, and lots of running. So that's a brief summary. We'll get into it. What do you guys think?
The
of
elevator pitch.
Yes, the 30-second elevator pitch. What do you guys think of this episode? Father Corey, what's your top level impression of it?
All I can say is this has been a roller coaster season so far. We started out high. We had the episode which shall not be named, and then we had this one again, which I enjoyed this one. This is more classic Doctor Who again. Like you said, running and aliens, and yeah, that's about it.
All right. Jimmy, how about you?
Similar. I watched some of the reviews, the instant reviews on YouTube after the episode aired, and one of the commentators said, well, I'm going to address the big question first. Yes, this episode is better than Orphan 55. And
low bar.
And I thought the same. I thought this is a pretty lightweight episode. It is not great, but to quote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, mostly harmless. It was basic fun at kind of a low level. I'd give it a 4 or a 5 out of 10. I didn't not enjoy it, but it didn't wow me either.
Yeah. So for me, I would have put Skyfall at about an 8 out of 10. Mm-hmm. I would put Orphan 55 at a generous 2 or 3. This one I would have put around a 6 or 7. Fair. It was good. Much better. Could have been more, but we'll get into that. Some things I wish it would have done. But let's talk about the episode itself, though. So Nikola Tesla is a real historical figure. Jimmy, I know you know who Nikola Tesla was. Father Corey, you knew who Nikola Tesla was before the episode aired, right?
A little bit. I didn't know a lot about his history, but I knew who he was and some of the inventions he had done.
Okay. So I guess I felt like people knew who Tesla was, but I guess a lot of people don't.
But that's a new thing, though. That's the funny part is, he was a big name at the time. I mean, him and Edison were battling it out and were well known for their battles. But after he died, and even before he died, I mean, because, he had basically died penniless, as the show mentioned,
mm-hmm.
He kind of faded from history. One thing the Wikipedia entry about him talks about is that in, I think, 1960, there's the International Standards Institute, or IEEE, or one of those, named a measure for him. But other than that, he really wasn't known in popular culture until about the 90s again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the Tesla car company was invented by Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And that brought him more into popularity again.
As someone who deals with mysteries on Mysterious World and who's just been interested in them for years, I've been very aware of Nikola Tesla. And yes, Mysterious World fans, we will be doing Nikola Tesla in the future because he's credited with all these inventions. He had other inventions he was working on that didn't pan out for one reason or another, like the tower in this episode, which was basically planetary radio Wi-Fi. That's what that was planned to be. And then when he died in 1943 at the age of 86 in an apartment building where he was living, and he was penniless. And there are these claims that like the government or someone came and mysteriously took all of his papers, and they're suppressing all of this secret Nikola Tesla knowledge and stuff that they've never let out and stuff. And so that's one of the claims that's out there. And yeah, I've been aware of Tesla. I've also, everyone is aware to an extent of Edison. What a lot of people are not aware of is something they do touch on in this episode. And I was glad they touched on it because it's nice to see this. It was the battle between AC and DC current,
right?
What's known as the War of the Currents, which was a real thing back at this time. Edison was a fan of direct current or DC current, and Tesla was a fan of alternating current or AC current. And ultimately AC current won. AC current is what powers your house. It is much more efficient for commercial use than DC power is, and so Edison lost that one. But this was a big battle, and partially through proxies. The two would have there were these different factions of AC power companies and DC power companies, and I'm kind of glad they kept it at the level they did and didn't go into some of the details, because one of the things that would happen, the DC current fans in this episode are like, AC current is dangerous and these people have been killed and stuff. And actually, to demonstrate the deleterious effects of AC current back in the day, they would publicly electrocute dogs. And see how dangerous AC current is? It just killed this dog. And sometimes they didn't know the right dosage to kill the dog, the right voltage, and they'd have to try it repeatedly. And in the most extreme case, there was an elephant named Topsy that the zoo that owned her could not get rid of her, and so they couldn't find anyone who would take her, and so they decided to electrocute Topsy, the elephant, to show just how dangerous AC current is. It'll even electrocute an elephant if you pump enough into it.
Yeah. I'm glad they didn't show that. There was a 2017 movie, by the way, called The Current War, which was a Benedict Cumberbatch as Edison, I think, and Nicholas Hoult as Tesla. But it was mostly about Edison versus Westinghouse, which is a name Americans probably know.
Because Tesla basically signed his patents over to Westinghouse for AC current. And of course, living out here in the rural areas, I'm really glad we went to AC current because it's much more efficient for long distance transmission than DC is.
There is
DC,
a reason
AC boosters
won.
And things like that.
Right.
But of course, the funny part is your computer is DC current inside of it.
Yes.
That little box you plug into the wall takes AC and turns it into DC. So we still use DC, but just not for long distance transmission, which is what Edison and Tesla were trying to get.
And if we had used DC current for housing, we'd have to have like a power plant on every block generating power.
Yep. Right. Exactly. Right. And rural places, basically, you would just have to set up, generators at every farm.
Right. So to move to the
can the listener tell we're geeks?
Yes, I know we're kind of geeky about it.
Well, we got some issues. I'm a train geek too, and we'll talk about that when we talk about the train scene. But
okay. Last thing is, younger internet geeks may remember that the internet comic The Oatmeal by now I forget his name. The guy who does this really popular webcomic.
Yep.
He bought Wardenclyffe a few years ago through a crowdsourced fundraiser on Indiegogo. He raised over $1 million to buy the property,
that land,
and he's turning it into a Tesla museum. So that's kind of cool. So
even though the building itself is gone because it was torn down about
1916.
10, 15 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Or at least the tower is.
But this was 2013, so I'm not sure where, how it's progressed or whatever. So I should have done some more research on where they are with this, but this was a while ago. So, but let's talk about this show, Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror. I have to point out that the actor who played Tesla looks remarkably like the real Nikola Tesla. They did a really good job making him look like Tesla.
Well, they did even better because the actor is Croatian American, which is what Tesla was. Tesla was from Croatia.
Yeah.
And so they found an actor who
Goran
fit him
Viznik.
almost perfect.
Yeah, what else has he been in? I recognize the name. I don't recognize. Oh, he was on ER. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Goran Viznik. He's been in a few other things, including Electra, which we won't talk about. But which was a horrible movie. But he looked remarkably like him. So let's start with the beginning. They're at Niagara Falls at the Niagara generator, which was a real thing that Tesla built, a generator at Niagara Falls, and he's got some investors he's trying to pull in, and he's demonstrating various things, and he demonstrates a Tesla coil, which we call a Tesla coil, this thing that generates sparks through the air, and talks about wireless electricity, and it all falls apart. It's going well until someone mentions this news article about him receiving an electrical signal from Mars, and they mock him for that.
That's a real thing.
Yes.
He did receive. People debate what exactly he heard. He may have overheard Marconi's tests at a distance, but he did hear a signal that he thought came from outer space, and people, including him, speculated it might be from Mars.
Interesting.
And then,
by the way, I like, this is something I really like, that they, oftentimes when Doctor Who goes to historical figures, they just kind of shoehorn them in to the story, like William Shakespeare or Charles Dickens. But Tesla works because his backstory with the signal from Mars becomes very important in this episode. And then his skill set as an inventor becomes quite important in this episode. So I like the fact they're picking up on a real person with a real history that works with this show, and they're not just shoehorned into some weird alien scenario for no reason.
Well, and another thing we complain a lot about is where all these great ideas like Shakespeare come from the Doctor or the companions. And in this case, everything they mentioned were things that Tesla had already been developing or thinking about before the Doctor showed up.
They don't give him new ideas.
No. So there's nothing where you could say, oh, Tesla had that idea because of the Doctor.
Right.
No, he already had all these ideas before.
And as I commented recently in response to some feedback, I don't mind if the Doctor gives the historical figure a few ideas. I just don't like it when that's all that happens.
Right.
But we don't even have that issue in this episode at all. It's just like everything they mention is stuff like, oh, yeah, I was working on that, or I've been working on that. I've been thinking about that. Oh,
yeah. I'm going to be honest. I thought at some point that it was going to be revealed that Tesla was an alien brought here, that his knowledge was because he was an alien. I'm glad they didn't do that, actually. I think it's better that he's just a regular human being who was this mad genius, this crazy inventor.
It's a little too soon to say Tesla was an alien.
So, because it's always aliens. So that's from another show.
Well, I mean, the Tomorrow People had Hitler was an alien, but there was enough time there to say, okay, Hitler was an alien.
So that's not your big reveal when you talk about Tesla and Mysterious World, that he was actually an alien?
No, he was a demon.
Too soon.
So someone is killed, a worker at the generator that interrupts everything, and at first, someone says he was electrocuted, and Tesla says it's impossible. It can't be. My equipment wouldn't electrocute him. And what is it that killed him? Do we assume it was the aliens in this episode that killed this guy?
I think it was the aliens.
Okay. So, and then we have this, not only we have Tesla, but we have Miss Skerritt, Dorothy Skerritt.
Dorothy.
Yep, who is his assistant, who works with Tesla. And she's
a real life person. She was his secretary, one of two secretaries that he had, and she did like him. She thought he was a good boss, even though he had a reputation for being kind of the absent-minded professor. She thought he was very kind, but she didn't work for him in this time frame. She started working. She worked for him from like 1912 to 1922, which is after this episode is set. Okay. So they've relocated her in time. It's a consequence of the Time War, no doubt.
Of course, yes, we'll say that. So they find out that someone has stolen parts from the machinery from Tesla's machines, and while they're investigating that, Tesla finds this green floating ball, obviously alien.
Yeah, he should train with a lightsaber with that.
I was thinking
Exactly.
Yes. There's a loud noise. They run. Someone is coming. The doctor jumps in. One of the investors shoots at them. Was this Edison's guy? Now that I look back at this was Edison's guy who had stolen parts for Edison. So this was separate from the aliens. And then so that one of the aliens shows up.
He gets shot by the aliens.
Right. Laser at that guy, killing him, and then shoots at the doctor and the others as well. And then it's a real quick jump here to them on a train. Where the fam is in costume, period costume. Whereas the doctor, by the way, isn't, which I thought was odd.
Yeah, and that's something the doctor has multiply in the past donned period costumes. I mean, Tom Baker in Towns of Wing Chiang got dressed up in 19th century dress, and on Necros, the Sixth Doctor, Colin Baker, wore the traditional Necrosian blue morning robes, and the doctor, even just going to Scotland, wore tartan. And so the doctor historically has had no problem wearing period costume, but for some reason they didn't want to put Jodie Whittaker in a dress.
Yeah, that would be, I think that's actually, what would have happened. It's interesting.
She would have been dressed similar to Yaz.
Yeah, interesting. So and then they're on a train for some reason. Like they don't show us how they get to the train.
They just say, "Oh, it was on time." It was on time.
The train is just moving. Have you ever been on a train? You know they have to speed up to get up to speed, right?
Especially the old school trains like that.
Yeah, they don't just fly down the tracks from the moment you press the go button.
Well, I mean, I think what they were implying is that there's this interim period where they run from the generator and run to the station and get on board the train as the train's leaving, and they don't show us any of that. They just kind of show them opening the door while the train, like you said, is already flying down the tracks. So a period of time has elapsed. It was a bit abrupt. It was kind of weird, but
it was too little. I thought somehow, I shouldn't be expected to stop and rewind in order to get what's happening in an episode. And I thought the train is like attached to the building that they were in, and they just ran from the building into the train, and it instantly started going fast.
I wonder if somewhere there was they filmed a scene where they're running, and you see the depot ahead, and then all of a sudden they're on the train, which that's a classic TV trope, that's pretty classic, but
probably cut for time. So
why is Nikola Tesla surprised that there is a train attached to his building? Didn't he know that?
Yeah. Well, admittedly, as a train geek, I kind of laughed because, of course, they show the train and it's a freight train. Right. It's a classic steam-pulled freight train, and then they're on a passenger train. Maybe it's a mixed train, which they used to have, where you'd have the freight at one end and passenger cars at the back end, but or vice versa.
Were they in a passenger car? They were in a freight car.
Freight cars don't have doors between the cars.
Oh, okay. So it's a passenger car that was set up as a freight.
It might have been a baggage car that they were sitting in, but it was still a passenger car.
I gotcha. Okay. All right. That is a nice train geek detail. We'll take that.
I'll just throw it in here just to throw my train geek. They wouldn't have used that link pin to that coupler the way they did. Yeah. They didn't have the first of all, United States never had the buffer couplers like you see in Great Britain. They would have had the knuckle couplers at that time, because by that time all the railroads had switched over to the knuckle coupler like we see today.
Right.
So just a couple of train geek notes in case anybody else actually happens to be a train geek that listens to this as well.
Awesome. We support all geekdoms on this show. So thank you. So the doctor introduces Yaz and Ryan and Graham to Nikola Tesla. Yaz and Ryan don't recognize him as our designated millennials. Apparently, they're unfamiliar with him. Apart from
even
the car.
Graham doesn't know much about him.
Right. He recognizes the name.
I like the fact that I liked how they played with this, because people today, most people don't really have any kind of clear idea of who Tesla was, if they even know.
Right.
And I liked seeing, I like it because it takes the edge off of the doctor's fanboyism.
Right.
You know, the doctor, whenever the doctor meets a famous historical person, it's like, oh, this person is the best ever. I'm such a fan. And that I find a little annoying frequently. And here I like it. It's like, why are you geeking out over this guy? Who is he?
Yeah.
Right.
And eventually they do make the connection. Oh, the Tesla car company, right? He invented that.
Right.
No, it was named for him. No.
So, yeah, the doctor does say she always wanted to meet Tesla, but he's a big fat liar. And then we kind of leave it there for a second until we have to come back to it, which I think is good. I think it creates this little bit of dramatic tension for a few minutes. The hooded figure shows up to attack again.
With a Silurian gun.
With a Silurian laser gun, and she takes it from the attacker, but it turns out he also has red lightning in his hands, so that's handy. So what I did there?
It's very, very Palpatine-y.
Yes. Now, Doctor, you will die. No, sorry.
Yes.
So he lowers his hood.
The hood fits perfectly.
Yeah. He lowers his hood, and it turns out it's the dead plant worker from the generator, but now his eyes are glowing red. And they escape from him again. They, like you said, they do the classic when you're on a train, you get rid of the bad guy by disconnecting the car from the rest of the train, which the engineer doesn't notice at all and doesn't stop the train.
No, it does absolutely no emergency stop or anything like that of the air brakes, which they would have had at that time.
So, and then she explains to him, I called you a liar because you told me you hadn't seen anything weird, because she'd asked him that before. But she's detecting readings from the green ball, the floaty ball, but he still refuses to say anything about it, which is interesting.
Well, I was kind of irritated. I was irritated by this accusation because he never doctor asked, "Did you see anything else? Anything strange?" He doesn't answer. He didn't lie. He just never said anything.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Also, they were just in a firefight. The doctor, they were both there for seeing weird stuff.
Yeah.
But I like how Miss Garrett takes Tesla's side on this, even though it's pointed out that he's hiding something that could be dangerous, and she stands by him, and I thought that was neat. What they're doing is they're setting up, and this becomes very explicit later in the episode. They're setting up Tesla as a kind of parallel to the doctor, as the genius outsider inventor figure. And they're setting up Miss Garrett as Tesla's companion equivalent.
Right.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
And they do make it more explicit towards the end, but yeah, they definitely are setting that up.
So just like the fam would stick by the doctor, Miss Garrett is going to stick by Tesla.
Right. So we have wide shot New York City, the Statue of Liberty before it became a weeping angel. We pretend that didn't happen. So the doctor goes on about the Gilded Age New York. It's the best ever. Oh, more wealth was created at this time. More poor people than ever before. And no, that's not true.
No, more poor people in the past. The way the modern world gets started is capitalism starts lifting people out of poverty, and global poverty diminishes dramatically over the course of the 19th and 20th centuries.
Right. Before the 19th and 20th centuries, people lived basically on the edge of starvation. Most people, 90% of people.
Yep.
They were one bad harvest away from mass die-offs. By the 20th century, yes, there were poor people just jammed into New York City and other big cities, but they were still not more of them than there were in the past.
And more and more people were getting jobs at places like Edison's factory.
Yes.
Which paid good wages and helped them to have a stable life.
I felt annoyed.
The reason that citification happens in the first place, the reason that people move to the cities, is because it is in their advantage to do so.
Right.
They have better lives and more economic opportunity in the city than they had back on the farm. That's why they came to the city.
Right.
Which is still, it's sadly a condition today. There's still plenty more opportunities in the big cities than there are, say, like out here in middle of nowhere, Montana.
So one of the things that bothered me is like I felt like that line was thrown in there to sort of balance out the people getting rich, but they're still poor people. Like, I don't know. It just felt like obligatory preaching.
It's uninformed. It's like the writers trying to do Ferengi on Deep Space Nine. They want to portray things a certain way, but they don't really know how economics works. And it's the same thing here. This is their virtue signaling. We got to do but we got to appease all the people in the audience who might think, but this was the age of robber barons, and so for the rich have to get richer and the poor have to get poorer. So that had to be happening here. So we got to throw in this line to pacify them.
Yeah,
if that's the worst preaching they had in this episode, it's
still
mild.
Big deal.
It's fine. It's TV in the modern age. This is what we deal with. So we encounter protesters against AC. We talked about that before, the AC versus DC debates. Someone throws out an anti-immigrant slur against Tesla again, just thrown out there once and doesn't come back again. It seemed odd just to throw that in there.
Admittedly, that would have been time appropriate. Sadly,
yes. The whole anti-Irish thing was big then too. Still, that was anti-Italians. So we have a mention of the Tesla cars when they're in Tesla's lab, quote unquote, which is pretty bare. And he eventually tells someone that he tells Yaz, the reason there isn't more stuff in the lab is because I keep it all in my head. That's where I do all my designing, which is actually one of the problems. Is Tesla did not keep enough in reality, didn't keep enough of his notes and designs and stuff in physical form for people to go back and historically look at it, which is one of the reasons why he got kind of lost in history.
I also thought one of the reasons his lab is so bare is because he has such trouble getting and keeping investors.
Yes, that's true. Although it turns out that Wardenclyffe, his other place, has a lot more stuff in it too, which we'll see later. The doctor then does another one of these speeches where she informs us how Tesla comes up with all the great ideas of the 20th century: X-rays, drones, alternating current. She picks some interesting choices there. I mean, there are many more things, but and all true, by the way, and more. He comes up with more, and we get more of that mentioned. And then we finally get this green orb brought out, and she recognized it. It's an orb of Thasser, not I wrote down Thassa. Even though I'm from Boston, I still thought it was Thassa. Turns out it's Thassor. It's just Jodie Whittaker's accent.
She's got a non-rhotic accent, so she tends to drop final R's.
I thought it was FASA, F-A-S-A, which was the company that made the BattleTech game system.
Yes, and D&D even, I think, at one point, yeah.
I was split the difference between y'all. My first thought was that it was Thassa, which I thought, okay, it's like a truncated version of the ancient Greek word for lake or sea. And then I thought maybe she said FASA, like the gaming company.
Yes, yeah. This is us struggling with the still with the Yorkshire accent, and there was a line in this episode that Graham delivered that I don't remember exactly where it was, but I went over it a couple times and I still not sure what he said. So it's this is going to be the thing every episode.
It's a good thing that good pudding comes from Yorkshire.
Yeah, one of their best exports. So, sorry, folks. So
I had to throw it in. Sorry.
Yes. The orb of Thasser is sent out by an ancient race called the Thasser, who used them to spread their knowledge throughout the cosmos. They were very generous people who didn't have patents or copyright
or prime directives.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and Tesla has one of these now. But
the doctor says this one's been repurposed.
Yes.
And later, it's going to turn out that the bad guys for this episode have repurposed it so that it's a spy orb. And it's been sent to Earth to find Tesla.
Specifically.
And that's why it starts behaving differently as soon as it saw him at the beginning of the episode. How it knew it was Tesla it was looking for, I'm not sure. But it's ultimately connected to the Mars signal he thought he got. Because he got the Mars signal and then he responded back. And that's what led to the orb being sent to find him.
Right.
Which seems very, how do you, out of, a billion humans or whatever on Earth at the time, how do you know which one sent the message that you're trying to track? I mean, he didn't send a photo of himself.
Right.
So how does it identify him? And wouldn't it be simpler to just keep exchanging text messages with him and say, hey, let's meet somewhere? I mean, that's how real people do it.
Right. Yeah. Or just follow the signal back to its origin and go there and grab the guy operating the thing.
Yeah.
So we have this nice bonding moment between Tesla and the doctor over them both being inventors of sorts. And then that's interrupted when they see one of Thomas Edison's men spying on them through the window poorly. And so the doctor goes and confronts Thomas Edison, who is a bad guy in this episode. Edison is mostly. Yeah, he's not the bad guy, but he's the greedy guy who takes credit for other people's work and is always about making a buck, and whereas Tesla is virtuous in his.
Admittedly, a common accusation against Edison. I mean, he was a brilliant man in his own right, but he was much more brilliant at marketing than he was at inventing. Right,
which the people consider about Steve Jobs too. Steve Jobs was not an inventor; he was a marketer, and it's true. It's true.
And so this is something that I was glad, and I've seen other people comment on. They were glad that even though Edison was played largely unsympathetically, he is not a complete villain in this episode. Right. Number one, he is not the bad guy. He is not the antagonist in this episode.
He's just kind of a jerk.
He's just kind of a jerk. Number two, when the red-eyed space Hitler comes in and force lightnings everyone in his lab and kills them, Edison is genuinely concerned about his employees and says, I had dinner with this man and his wife the other day. I'm going to have to tell his widow that he's dead. And so he shows compassion. He also, in talking to Edison, or in talking to Tesla later in the episode, he makes a point of the best invention either one of us has ever had is my lab, because what my lab does is it has people take their ideas and make them real. That's what's not happening so much with Tesla. And because he's not a good businessman. And so Edison's view is ideas and patents and things, they're not exactly work made for hire, but he's developed a system that allows him to effectively bring ideas into concrete, practical form that will actually benefit people. And like it or not, that model has worked and continues to work with big companies that innovate like Apple and so forth.
Well, it really was kind of the early 20th century version of Maker Faire. The idea of, some place where people could come and invent things.
Or startup incubators. That's another thing we have today in industry.
Yeah. And then finally, at the end of the episode, after they've gone through this traumatic experience together and Tesla has reaffirmed his value in Edison's eyes, Edison offers him a job and does so in order to save him from bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And so even though Edison is largely unsympathetic, he is not a monster in this episode. And I like the fact they tried to portray him somewhat more nuancedly than they otherwise might have.
Right. Exactly. We have mention here of the Wardenclyffe project, which was a real thing. It was that thing that the place where the oatmeal, I was talking about the comic, they bought it to build a Tesla museum, and its aim was this wireless communications idea that Tesla had about having long distance wireless communication and power delivery, and again, this somewhat predates Marconi. They were sort of simultaneously developing their ideas for radio. This was a different. I'm pretty sure. I'm not certain, but I'm pretty sure this was a different kind of technology with the same aim of communicating over long distance without wires.
And I think Marconi, although they were kind of working on it about the same time, I think Marconi actually did beat him to the punch.
Yes,
he did actually get his radio system working before Tesla could.
Yes. Then the red lightning guy shows up, the alien shows up at Edison's lab, like you mentioned, and kills everyone. And then we have a new one who attacks the doctor and others in Edison's Edison's office. And Ryan picks up the Silurian laser gun and wants to use it, and no guns, Ryan. This guy's killing everybody.
This is so. I know we've commented on this before, but this gun fetish, this anti-gun fetish that the doctor has is really getting annoying. The reason that guns keep showing up in every episode is they are very useful tools for defending yourself.
Yep.
And that's the reason the British Army carries them. But every time we have guns in an episode now, the doctor has to get her obligatory no guns line in before they proceed then to undercut it, because Edison has a revolver that he uses.
He's a really good shot with, by the way.
Yeah, and he uses it to dispatch space scorpions.
Well, he gets criticized for it too by Yaz.
She just says, "Where did you get that?" And he dodges her question and proceeds to keep shooting, which is what he should do. Right. They're under attack by evil space monsters, and also Graham has a gun later in the episode, which they conveniently have failed to work because it's a space gun. And so the utility of guns, it's like they've just got to get their obligatory virtue signal line in there about no guns, and then they undercut it. Right. And this is just bad writing. It's also unrealistic. There is a reason people use guns, including the guns that keep the UK safe from foreign invasion.
Right.
And the doctor also has no problem doing other things, like she's been using bombs in recent episodes, but they're not guns. And it's just ridiculous. This is just terrible, bad writing. I understand the doctor wanting to maintain a peaceful solution ethic.
Right.
And that's fine. But when the chips are down, bring out the guns.
Well, in the conclusion of this episode, she uses basically a giant weapon against the bad guys.
Right. She lightnings the thing. Right. It's not an anti-violence stance, which would, okay, if you wanted to take that would be a choice. But it's simply against this particular kind of technology that produces violence, as opposed to other kinds. And it's just, I mean, the laser gun is not it's a laser gun. How is that different from the other kind of weapons they use? Yeah, you're right. It's virtue signaling.
And right now our British listeners are rolling their eyes, but it's true though. I mean, this is just, they have decided this particular implement of defense is bad, evil, yucky, don't touch.
We need to keep talking about
everything else is fine, but this particular one is bad.
Okay. So, but to their credit, we don't get a lot of this in this episode. That we kind of move on from here. And so then Yaz and Tesla examine the green ball and work out that it's scanning its surroundings. The doctor uses the chemistry in Edison's lab to trap the creature briefly that's attacking them. And then the two other red-eye guys show up, and they take Tesla and Yaz to the alien scorpion ship we're told that it's called the Skithra, and they meet the queen, which at first I thought was the Rachnos queen.
Yeah.
She looks a lot like the Rachnos queen. She's better than the Rachnos queen, though. I like the Skithra better than the Rachnos.
Very similar makeup and everything, though. I mean, the makeup and the practical effects they put on her look very similar to Rachnos.
Right.
Very similar, but her performance is much better. She is not over the top in the way the Rachnos queen was, and she's not got a mouthful of spit the whole time. So it was better. I found it distracting, though. Why is the queen the only one who has a human-like face?
Right.
Because they're supposed to be the same species.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have sexual dimorphism in a species, but it's a little odd that one of them has such a human face and the others don't.
Yeah. I mean, we could come up with headcanon, but you're right. It was a little weird. Just to take a moment to talk about the actors. The actress who played the queen is Anjali Mohindra. She was in the Sarah Jane Adventures, and actually was in it with Bradley Walsh, who plays Graham. Where he was a bad guy in an episode, and they worked together. He did not recognize her in her makeup because he only saw her in the makeup. And in fact, at one point asked her for to see a picture of her so that he'd recognize her on the street. She goes, and she had to Bradley, it's me. We worked together before. So that's a funny thing. I should have mentioned that Thomas Edison is played by the actor Robert Glenister, who was in The Caves of Androzani. So he
was a minor character in that.
Yes, previous acting experience on Doctor Who.
Since we're talking about actors, Harold Green, which is one of the Red Lightning Bolt guys, was played by Paul Casey, who is all over Doctor Who, Sarah Jane Adventures, and Torchwood, but mostly under makeup. He's one of these people who plays like the Jadoon. Matter of fact, he'll be the Jadoon leader in the next episode next week. but he was also in Star Wars Episode 7, 8, and 9, and Rogue One, again, under costume.
This is one of those guys just always plays in costume, right?
Yep.
He must not have a latex allergy.
Exactly.
Nope,
he has the ability to be it's not claustrophobic, put it that way. So the Doctor now takes Edison and Scarrett on the TARDIS, Miss Scarrett on the TARDIS, and they realize that the orb is this bugging device, and Edison is agog at the TARDIS, of course, and we find out that
and he's got a really offensive line in this scene
about
he's talking to Graham, and he says, "Your accent is British, right?" Or English, I forget which one he says, and Graham confirms it, and he says, "There's a country that has never understood business." And
really
I
weird.
Just wanted to bang my head on the desk. I mean, how ridiculously crudely offensive. I think it's meant to play two functions, because this will not be as apparent to an American audience, but England has a reputation for doing business well historically.
Yes.
That's what the city is in London, is the business district. And you have the London School of Economics, which is very famous. And if you know about economics, England and the UK more broadly has a reputation for being quite good at business. And so I think that this line is meant to portray Edison as kind of an arrogant figure, when the true who's I don't know exactly what, but who's misinformed in some way, when in fact Britain has a very good sense for business.
Yes.
But it's still just such a lousy line, and
and of course you got
America. I just want to assure our British listeners, Americans do not think of England this way.
Right.
No, and it's of course it's meant to be the boorish American who thinks that America invented business and the world of business revolves around America and.
Right.
Yeah, but I also think it's probably unfair to the historical Edison, because I don't think the historical Edison. I don't have any evidence that the historical Edison would have thought that way.
Right. So then we find out that the reason the aliens were kidnapping Tesla is that they are a scavenger species. They steal all their technology that they have from other species. They're space pirates of a sort, scorpion space pirates.
They're the Goa'uld.
They're essentially the Goa'uld, and they don't know how to fix their technology, and so they want Tesla, who is an early 20th century American, to fix their advanced alien technology.
And this was okay. Initially I was like, why do they want Tesla to fix their alien tech? That makes no sense. But then it turns out they don't know how their tech works.
Right.
So they don't know. And they're not going to, they know that Tesla could communicate with them over interstellar distances. Let's go find that guy and see if he can work with this stuff. That, or interplanetary distances.
Yeah.
There's some logic there. These aren't the smartest scorpions in the drawer, and
perhaps they figure that he can figure it out. If he can, do all the earthbound inventions that he's done, maybe he can figure out the space stuff.
It could be also that they're trapped in Earth
the
space,
solar system,
the solar system. And he's the smartest person that they found because he communicated with them when all the others didn't. So he's the smartest person that they could find local. So he's going to be the one.
And they were more concerned about their weaponry than they were like being able to travel.
That's true.
And this also gives us a very valuable lesson for first contact protocols with aliens. When you get their signal, do not signal back.
Right. Not until you're ready to defend yourself. I found it interesting, though, that at no point does the Queen say, this doctor lady seems to be a lot more knowledgeable about this technology than he is. I should take her instead. She stays focused on Tesla.
Well, she mentioned there's one point where the Doctor starts talking about all this is Venusian ship with this, that, and the other thing, and she said, "Oh, I'll keep you too," basically paraphrasing.
Yeah,
basically, but she's going to keep Edison as well.
But even
they can get rid of.
Yeah, but even later, like when they escape and they're coming for Tesla, not the Doctor. You know what I mean? It's still focused on Tesla, which is it's fine. I mean, we're telling a story here. That's okay. It's just I thought it was interesting. That they stayed focused.
They could have improved it by either not revealing how smart the Doctor is compared to Tesla, or by having the Queen show more interest in the Doctor.
Right. Right. So, as you mentioned, the Doctor does show up using a transmat device that needs to recharge. It needs time to recharge before she can beam them back out again. And
because of course it does.
Because of plot reasons. Right.
Yeah.
And just like something else later will be for plot reasons. And so the Doctor realizes it all again. The tech is stolen, and she then transports them back to Wardenclyffe altogether. This Tesla's other lab, which actually contains some very interesting things that in the background, which the stuff they don't talk about is stuff from Tesla's real lab, like that big coil thing on the wall behind that big like wall size coil. That was an actual thing from Tesla's lab, and some other stuff in there. I thought that was fun to see. The Skithra give an ultimatum: you either give us Tesla or we'll ravage the Earth. It's the same high stakes.
Kill everybody.
The Doctor looks at the upside. Hey, it's recognition for Tesla. The aliens want him and not Edison. So it means it means you must be the real inventor. He explains. Then we have this explanation for what Wardenclyffe is. It was this tower that's supposed to use the Earth's magnetic field to send a signal and through the planet and create a wave. And instead, they're going to use it to send a bolt of lightning at the alien ship. They're going to turn it into essentially a giant Tesla coil, which is fun. Yep. If you're ever in Boston at the Museum of Fine Arts, we have a Tesla coil show there that is a lot of fun to watch. They generate lightning in this big cage, and it's loud and fun.
Mm-hmm. And at this point, just to make Edison unsympathetic, he has a line where he's got to diss this idea as crazy because it's Tesla's idea, even though it's just been endorsed by the lady with the magic flying box that you were just inside.
Right. Then they explain why the aliens haven't just shown up and beamed in and killed them all or just beamed them back out again. It's because the Doctor has extended the TARDIS shields over Wardenclyffe. All right, that's good. Yaz and Edison are then sent to New York City to get everybody in New York City off the streets.
This is great. I love this. I like the fact that and lately on the show they've been doing this. They'll divide up into teams to accomplish specific things.
Yes.
So the Doctor divides them up into teams to do their different things. She sends Yaz and Edison into the city to get people off the streets for when they make the big lightning bolt. And Yaz is having trouble getting people to get off the streets. But Edison realizes the way to do it because he's been whipping up all this anti-Tesla AC current stuff. And he says Tesla's doing something with his tower. And then he has a line that rhymes that will stick in people's memory. We're as good as fried if we stay outside. And it's like that clicks for people. It's like there's the Edison marketing genius.
That's right.
Exactly.
And everybody goes inside.
I have to point out that the director, the producer, whoever, does not really know New York geography very well because they look over one of the tenements and there's the tower that's in Shoreham, Long Island, like miles and miles away.
Exactly.
But it's right there outside in New York City.
Even mentioned about how the TARDIS, Edison was marveled that the TARDIS moved him from one side of New York to the other, which is a significant distance.
Right. So Ryan and Graham are sent to go through Tesla's lab to find stuff to help defend them against the aliens, which they don't eventually actually find anything useful. Tesla's ray gun doesn't work.
They find a space gun that the Doctor strangely fails to condemn.
Yes, exactly. Then that's when the Scorpions show up, a la Avengers.
Oh, Scorpions! These clearly are not Earth Scorpions. What a racist you are, Dom.
Sorry, alien Scorpions with human faces, or pseudo-human faces. They show up and start doing an Avengers Infinity War on the shields. If you've seen that, and then we're told. Here's the big plot MacGuffin technology moment. They can't power the tower and the shields at the same time, and there'll be a 30-second gap in which they'll be unprotected while the tower fires its laser bolt.
They needed Scotty to get more power out of the TARDIS.
Yes, yeah. I mean, this is like when I can't run my space heater and the washing machine at the same time. I have to only have one at a time.
Yep.
This is like the TARDIS's power consumption needs must be really finely balanced. I mean, it can fly across space and time. It can shatter the space-time continuum. It's larger on the inside than the outside. but it can't both maintain shields and do a lightning bolt.
I mean, a relatively simple job like a lightning bolt. I mean,
you look at the amount of amps that it shows on Tesla's gauge there, and they're talking, 20, 40, 60, 80 amps, which for a household is a lot of power.
Yeah.
For like a typical warehouse or something like that, not so much.
80 amps is not a lot
of power.
For a cosmos spanning time machine, it's like
that should be like plugging in
it's got more power.
That should be like plugging in your cell phone into your wall outlet. I mean, it's not a big deal.
The doctor's electric toothbrush. So
I thought what you were going to say, and yeah, I thought that was implausible, but I thought the big plot hole you were going to point out is we have a critical failure point plot where if you take out the queen, it solves everything. Because the doctor says they're hive species, so if we take out the queen, we take them all out. And it's like, have you ever dealt with ants?
Right.
Or bees? You take out the queen, they make a new one. And you don't get rid of the hive. They don't all die. They certainly don't all die instantly.
Right. What you have is undirected alien warriors running amok on Earth, which would be worse.
Mad at you because you just killed their queen.
Right. Well, and then apparently the queen figures out the plot hole in the doctor's plan, because if she comes down from the ship, shooting the ship doesn't get rid of them. No. So the queen shows up at the door, and the doctor confronts the queen, says, I gave you a chance, and now you've had your chance. Now I'm going to kill you, essentially.
Yep. I
gave you a chance to change your mind. You're not going to change your mind. So now you reap whatever you've sown, and if you die, it's your fault.
Yeah, she doesn't say kill.
Right.
What she then does is trick the queen into holding an object, which she then uses the sonic screwdriver on to teleport the queen back to her own ship.
It's the same transmat device that she had before.
So it looked different to me. There were two different transmat devices. There
was a thing she wore on her wrist, and then the battery thing that she was holding.
Right.
So there was a bracelet.
The queen was holding the bracelet.
In any event, the point is she teleports the queen back up to her ship, and they can then lightning the ship using the big tower. And for some reason, all of the other alien scorpion beings teleport back up there with her. Right. Apparently involuntarily, because they're all screaming on the ship.
Right.
And this makes no sense.
No.
You teleport one being. Why do as everyone else teleport up too? And then they lightning the ship. And instead of exploding, which a lot of people seem to have thought happened, because I've seen commentators commenting that the doctor basically killed all of them.
Right.
And based on the setup, you think that's exactly what's going to happen.
Right.
They're going to lightning bolt the ship and take out the queen. Instead, you watch the special effects carefully, and it's like a bad G.I. Joe episode from the 80s where instead of exploding, the alien ship zooms off into space really fast and just leaves.
Right.
Which, again, makes even less sense. And also, why aren't they going to come back tomorrow?
Yes.
None of this makes any sense. It's all avoiding the doctor killing somebody for no good reason.
Right. Right. It is all designed to just have the doctor have a peaceful resolution to it. But you're right. It doesn't make any sense. Why does the lightning bolt make the ship fly away? There's no explanation. Yeah. Why it does? None of it makes any sense in that all that resolution. But we just have to kind of accept it that the bad guys are gone, which is unsatisfying. But So we end up with, as you mentioned earlier, Edison offering Tesla a job and telling him he'll be bankrupt if he keeps working on the tower. But Tesla is a pure inventor. Yeah. And Yaz is sad that no one knows anything about Tesla in the future. But, the fact is people do know about Tesla. But, okay, that's fine. She didn't know about Tesla. So that's not everybody.
Trust me, loads of conspiracy theorists know about Tesla.
Exactly. So I was left with the question, especially given what happened in Spyfall, is why the doctor doesn't mind wipe Tesla and Edison.
Yes. So I wasn't going to comment on that. I was going to let it slide.
I was hoping to leave that one alone too, admittedly.
But as I pointed out in our Spyfall review, this creates a precedent of the Doctor casually mind wiping historical figures to avoid contaminating the timeline. That should, if she needed to do it for two people like the ones she did it for in Spyfall, she would definitely need to do it for Edison and Tesla, who had much more practical ability. I mean, one of the people she mind wiped was just a spy who was going to die within a year anyway.
Yeah, right.
And so there's no need to mind wipe her. And then the other, Ada Lovelace, she wrote the first computer program, but computers were so primitive in her day that letting her see a cell phone, she had no chance of practically duplicating that or anything close to it.
Well,
so you really didn't need to mind wipe her either.
Ada and Noor are historically very insignificant, except in certain points. Ada, again, like as I talked about in my little review of Spyfall, was as a computer programmer, she's very well known and quite famous actually. But outside of the computer programming realm, not so much. Noor, of course, knowing the history of British spycraft at the time of World War II, is famous. But outside of that, I'd never heard of her until that episode.
Yeah, so neither one of them had a practical ability to do much with the knowledge they acquired about the future. But Tesla and Edison are in a different league, and they're both broad spectrum inventors, and they could extrapolate considerably more from what they saw just in the TARDIS.
And they even make a point of Edison looking at inquisitively at the TARDIS. They brought it up that he was looking at it for inventions. Yeah.
So I noticed a commenter on YouTube brought this up. It's like, wait, didn't we just establish we need to mind wipe people? And even the Radio Times in London or in England devoted 2 paragraphs to this problem. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, okay, I was going to let it slide, but that was a real writing mistake back in Spyfall because it created a precedent that you're now going to have to ignore. The Doctor should only mind wipe people when there are very clearly established reasons why it's necessary.
Right.
Like Donna.
Yes. All right. And then one last bit of thing. My wife, Melanie, was watching it with me. She came up with an interesting point. She said something about the way the Doctor talks to people, the 12th Doctor, 13th Doctor talks to people, that kind of gets under her skin. Is when she lectures, she sounds scolding. But when say Matt Smith or David Tennant's Doctor confronted the bad guys, they didn't scold as much. They called them to be better. It's one of the things that she feels like there's it's an interesting perspective that they were calling them to live up to a better standard of excellence in themselves. Whatever aliens they were encountering that were doing bad things. I think of famously like the Vashta Narada, who were a force of nature. The 10th Doctor, did not scold them per se, but just was reasoning with them mostly. Whereas this Doctor just feels like she scolds a lot. I'm not sure if that. What's that?
I said, I don't know if I quite noticed that. One thing I noticed is she doesn't have quite the bluster as the 10th and 11th Doctor, and that's a good thing.
Yes. Or the 12th. Yeah. The Time Lord triumphant, Time Lord victorious, striding across the cosmos. I'm glad that this Doctor does not have that. That is actually
quite noticed the scolding, but that's not out of character for the Doctor either, though, because I'm sure we could go back through Classic Who and find plenty of Doctors that were more than happy to scold, like the first.
Yes, he was much more of a scold than this one, and that might be a consequence of Melanie has only seen New Who versus the full range of the Doctor.
Even so, though, and I'll be looking for it to see if I intuitively I think there may be there may be truth to that, but I would want to verify to see if my impression is accurate. But even if it is accurate, and even if previous Doctors have been scoldy, that doesn't mean it's a desirable characteristic for your protagonist.
Right. No. This is true. So that's Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror. I do want to have us share some feedback as well. Jimmy, you mentioned you had alerted us to a video review of Orphan 55 that you quite liked.
Yeah, so there's a YouTube channel called Sycorax Rock, and Sycorax Rock is a guy who, among other things, does music videos. He's got a really awesome series called 13 Songs for 13 Doctors, which he's in the middle of producing and needs to finish because he's doing such great work. But he also does reviews on his channel, and he decided for once to do a musical review. So he did Orphan 55 using the tune Mambo Number 5.
It was good.
And it's quite clever. It's very well done. He really knows his Doctor Who history. I mean, he's got deep Doctor Who history. He points out, and this is something that I hadn't remembered until a bit after the episode, but one of the things he points out is we've actually seen it before where the Doctor realizes we're on Earth in a subway, because that happens in the Colin Baker episode Mysterious Planet. And also there's an episode of the Sylvester McCoy's Doctor with his classic companion Ace. It's The Curse of Fenris, where they battle mutated monster humans from the future. In a base under siege story. And he weaves this stuff really nicely into some very clever lyrics. Like he's talking about, initially he's listing the characters who are in the story and what they do. So a little bit of Bella, she's the bomb. A little bit of Kane, she's Bella's mom. A little bit of Silas, fix the hose. This episode's a little bit on the nose.
and now that's stuck in your head. Sorry.
Yeah. And then, you know, later he's singing about the moralizing coda's out of place. This episode already made its case. Siege, base, woke case. Picture it with McCoy and Ace. And he had all of this done by Thursday when it aired on Sunday. So I have to say he does occasionally use a word that I wish he didn't, but he's really clever, really inventive, and he really deserves more YouTube views. So we'll have a link to his Orphan 55 review. And as with any YouTube channel, if you like what he's doing, like and subscribe.
Yes.
And should probably mention, too, that his name comes from the first David Tennant Christmas special where the Sycorax were chanting, and then the TARDIS translation comes in, and it's Sycorax Rock. Sycorax Rock.
Yeah.
That's right. Another alien spaceship hovering over an Earth city.
Yep.
So we have other feedback from Orphan 55. I just want to mention some of it. John Scrivo sent in an email. He says, please allow me the chance to vent about Orphan 55. I won't read all of it. He gets in some science detail, but he says it was a long 45-minute episode. And for an episode about global warming, all the science in it was nonsensical. He said he named a few things, but one of the things he says, I loved how the Doctor's in the tunnel and can't breathe because there's no oxygen. And yet there's a large fire burning in the background, which I thought was funny. I also think
maybe it was an acetylene fire.
Yeah, maybe it was. Maybe it was. He says, I think we need a break from Earth-centered episodes. Do you think, I went back and looked over the last few seasons, and there was actually a couple times when there were more Earth-centered episodes than we have had with the Doctor last season. So it's not, I don't think they're doing more Earth-centered, but the first 4 episodes of this season have all been on Earth, and we as we saw in the preview, so will the next episode be set on Earth. How do you feel about this? Do you want more stuff away from Earth?
We're stuck in the third Doctor's time all over again.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting. I kind of like the balance. I like having stuff in the past, historical. I love stuff in the contemporary on Earth, and then I like having stuff which is future or present or past in space on alien planets. I think that's one of the things that makes Doctor Who great. I would like to see more in this season away from Earth. I would agree with that.
And I don't know obviously we don't know what the future plans are, because they're very reticent to release any information until, immediately before, like 2 weeks before, when it has to go into the TV Guide or Radio Times. But
right.
It would be nice to see, because kind of like the nice balance is when they have an Earth episode or two, and then they go somewhere else, and then they come back, and you've got that back and forth where they're going into space, they're going into time, and then they come back to Earth.
Yes, it is nice to have that balance. I will say once again, following Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, I want historicals without aliens. I want to have a pure historical at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'll ever get it, but that's what I want. He says
in spin-off media, you will.
Yes.
Oh, and in case anyone wonders, Nikola Tesla has appeared in the Whoniverse in spin-off media, including novels and Big Finish.
Yes.
And has even met the Doctor, apparently, because the Sixth Doctor and Ace had an adventure with him, although we haven't heard that adventure. They just referred to it.
Interesting. So it seems, and then John's final point says, do you think the current format makes it hard to have 3 companions? It seems like it's hard for them to find enough for all 3 companions to do in an episode.
I kind of would agree with that, only because of the 10 episodes per season. Yeah. At least in Classic Who, when they had that many companions, they had a long season to flesh out the characters.
And then a companion could be, knocked out in the TARDIS for one episode, one story. Yeah. Take a break.
I don't personally, I don't think it's a problem. I think you can shuffle around the duties to give everybody enough to do to justify their presence. It may not be in every single episode, but if people are coming across as weak characters because they're not having enough attention paid to them, I think that's a flaw in the writing. I don't think it's a flaw in the structure.
Okay. Ted Koval writes on Facebook, I watched this episode, Orphan 55, last night, and I kept thinking, Jimmy's going to hate this episode. I can't wait to listen to the podcast. But, Jimmy, you didn't hate the episode altogether.
I didn't hate it. I thought a lot of it was mostly harmless. What I hated was the moralizing coda that was out of place.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. I think we all agree with that. Yep. Jason Thayer writes, okay, you guys, he says, I have a challenge for you. When you review Remembrance of the Daleks, I want you to be annoyed by the scene where the restaurant owner lectures the viewers about racism and all the talk about segregation. I want you to not even care about how cool Ace is when she blows stuff up. When you review The Green Death, get all annoyed by the environmental themes. Don't talk about how sad it is that Joe is leaving and how well Pertwee acts in the final scene. Be consistent, please. We actually have already talked about The Green Death, but what say you guys?
Father, you first.
Well, I'll say, with the Daleks is, I remember as a kid watching that episode, and that was back when that episode first came out, really. I mean, within a year or so after that episode came out, it came over to my PBS station. And I remember kind of looking at that episode going, this is really out of, now, Dom, you haven't seen it yet.
Yep.
But there's just a brief scene. It's like maybe 5 minutes in the middle of the episode, middle of the story, where the Doctor's in a little, coffee shop, little cafe. And there's this, gentleman from like Jamaica or something like that,
right.
somewhere in this side of the Caribbean, the Caribbean, and kind of stereotypical Caribbean, and it really is talking about racism, and it is out of place, and I guarantee you when we get to that episode, yes, Jason, we will criticize it because I remember as a kid just looking at going, what does this have to do with anything? I mean, it really is, other than the issue of the 2 different Daleks fighting against each other. Okay. But it still is really out of place. So, yeah, I agree that we will criticize that part.
Jimmy?
We have done The Green Death, and The Green Death does have an environmental political message, and I don't have a problem with that in principle. I don't even have to agree with the message to not have a problem with it. I don't buy the scenario that Soylent Green proposes, but Soylent Green is a great movie. Right. I don't buy the environmental message in the Omega Man, but that doesn't stop me from being able to appreciate the Omega Man. Cautionary tales are fine in science fiction, even if I think the odds of a particular cautionary scenario coming to pass are very low. What I mind is heavy-handed writing. And that's what we got at the end of Orphan 55. That was really what ruined that for me. If it had not been for the end, it would have been, okay, here's this environmental nuclear war themed episode. It's fine. It's just one post-apocalyptic scenario. And yeah, we need to watch out and make sure we don't get into a post-apocalypse scenario. Fine.
Right.
But it's the heavy-handed literally fourth wall breaking at the end, where they're showing the audience stuff. They are not showing the characters to make their point. And so so I didn't, the Green Death didn't do that.
Right.
And so I didn't have the same kind of problem with the Green Death. When we rewatch Remembrance of the Daleks, now it does have a kind of, first of all, Ace is totally cool. And not just when she blows stuff up. I love the scene where she beats up a Dalek with a baseball bat. That is
with an overpowered
awesome.
baseball bat. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'll have to look at it again when I see it again. And I remember the scene in the cafe. I don't remember it being as heavy-handed as Orphan 55.
No, it's still not.
It also may tie into broader theme. I think it does tie into broader themes in the episode, because one of the things in Remembrance of the Daleks is there is a kind of neo-Nazi movement that the episode deals with, and so, and it's also set in 1963. Yep. And I'm a little bit more hesitant to weigh in on this kind of situation, because I was not alive in Britain in 1963. I wasn't alive anywhere in 1963. And so I don't know what the culture was like from firsthand experience. I try to resist the advice of Steve Martin's grandmother's song, criticize things you don't know about. So, I know there was racism in the United States in 1963. And it could have been, and I would assume was a bigger issue in Britain in 1963 than it is in 2020. Right. So I, am going to try to be more nuanced in my approach to that. What I do mind, though, is heavy-handed writing. And if I don't remember that scene breaking the fourth wall, but if it did, or even if it came close to breaking the fourth wall, I would say they should have toned the writing down. They should have been more subtle about what they were doing. Maybe all you need is your neo-Nazi movement. Right. You don't need this scene in the cafe to put the cherry on the sundae.
And I will say too, we're about to record an episode of Secret Star Trek that's going to come out months from now, because it's going to be after the Picard series. But it's of a movie that I think we all enjoy, the three of us enjoy, but it has a environmental message as the base plot of the movie.
Right. Yeah.
But we still enjoy it.
Well, I think we will criticize it for that, because it's not heavy-handed. And this is the key. And Jimmy, you touched on it, which is, it's not so much the message that's the problem, or whether we agree with it or don't. And this was not just Orphan 55, but other episodes last season we criticized a lot. It's the way that it's done. It's heavy, right. If it's heavy-handed, if it breaks the fourth wall, if it's over the top in like our criticism in this episode of the Doctor's attitude toward the gun. It's not consistent.
Right. Or if it's the same message all the stinking time.
Right.
It gets annoying.
Yes.
Well, so, and like I said with Orphan 55, that's one of my criticisms against a lot of Christian fiction. Is I can agree with the message. I can agree with the message of the preaching in that book. But the way they do it is always so heavy-handed. Right.
Even with stuff I agree with, if it's heavy-handed, breaks the fourth wall, that's what we don't like. All right. So I think that's enough said about that for now, and probably for a while. We probably don't have to get back into that again unless there's a really good reason to. But I thought it was good to have that discussion now as we begin this season again.
No, that's good.
So, and by the way, we appreciate the feedback. And,
yes,
absolutely.
Challenging us in feedback, totally fine. It creates more opportunities for good discussion and interaction.
Yep,
that's right. That's why we're here to talk about deeper themes and hidden layers, and that's part of it. All right, so we do want to wrap things up by taking a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Doctor Who, including Derek B., John N., Jennifer P., Mark S., and Justin R. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. That's it from us. What did you think of Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or by sending us an email to drwho@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing Fugitive of the Jadoon. No fro bocho wocho. Until then,
I didn't kill my wife.
Until then, we're gonna do the Jadoon checking every outhouse and field house, whatever. Sorry. Until then, Father Corey Steakin, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, high-speed inventing is one of my specialisms.
Right. This is going to be fun.